Let's say that your 85-year-old billionaire mother, who happens to run the largest cosmetics company in the entire world, suddenly starts dating a photographer who is 25 years younger than her. And let's say that this guy starts brainwashing your mom, telling her, when you pass away, instead of leaving your billions to your kids, why not give it to me instead? If this happened to you, what would you do? Well, this is pretty much the plot in the Bettencourt Affair. The story of how Francoise Marie Banier ignited a bitter feud between Liliane Bettencourt, the heiress of the L'Oreal empire, and her daughter, Francoise Bettencourt Meyers. If you guys are new here, welcome to Brand Origins. My name is Chris Gordon, recording from all the way here in Iloilo City, Philippines. And boy, am I excited to share this story with you. So let's get started. Liliane Bettencourt was born in Paris, France in 1922. She was the child of Eugene Schuller, the founder of L'Oreal. In 1950, she'd married Andre Bettencourt, whom at one point was a deputy chairman of L'Oreal. Now, take note that her husband, Andre Bettencourt, has a bit of a Nazi past, as well as her father, Eugene Schuller, and along with a lot of other L'Oreal executives. But we're not gonna cover the Nazi past of L'Oreal because that story deserves its own episode. Anyway, so when Liliane Bettencourt was 35 years old, her father passed away, and she inherited the entire L'Oreal empire. Just to give you a picture of how wealthy she was, at the time of her death, her net worth was at $44 billion, and she was just behind Bernard Arnault of LVMH and Amancio Ortega of Zara. Now enter the affair. Of course, being rich and famous, Liliane Bettencourt had one of her photo shoots. Francoise Marie Banier happened to be the photographer. He worked as a writer and a celebrity photographer for a famous French magazine. During this time, Liliane Bettencourt's husband, Andre Bettencourt, was still around, but let's just say that their relationship isn't one you would describe as ideal. So since she was in this stage of her life when things were feeling a bit dull, Banier's presence truly stood out, especially since Banier was an absolute charmer. The pair became friends, and over the years, they got even closer. Banier was gradually establishing himself as a constant presence in her life. He would be lounging on Liliane Bettencourt's bed, telling her what to wear or if this outfit looks good on her. It's kinda gross, but okay, whatever floats your multi-billion-dollar boat, I guess. So, since Liliane Bettencourt was absolutely thrilled to have Banier around, she was very generous in showering him with gifts. You probably do this with your friends. You give your friends gifts, but I guess it's just a bit different if your friend is Liliane Bettencourt, who happens to be the richest woman in the world. So since she's friends with Banier, instead of buying him a shirt from Uniqlo or maybe a package from Amazon or Shopee, she bought him a 5-story building in Paris and then set up a private real estate trust, making Banier the co-owner. He then took the liberty of doing a shopping spree of all the properties that he wanted. And the gifts kept getting pricier. Both of them loves art. And so what do you do if a friend of yours loves art and you have billions of dollars? You do the sensible thing, which is to sign your art collection over to him. Yeah, that's what she did. They would tour art galleries together, and at the end of it all, she gave her art collection to Banier. Since Banier only wanted masterworks, the art collection that was signed over included works of Picasso, Matisse, and Mondrian, just among a handful of others. And we're not done yet. Apparently, Liliane Bettencourt gave him a life insurance policy worth over 250 million euros. And that didn't happen once. She gave him 2 life insurance policies. The other one was worth like 262 million euros. Like, holy hell. I swear, I don't care who you are. If you gave me something worth 250 million euros, you would instantly become my best friend. We don't even have to talk. That's it. We're friends forever. You'll be the best man at my wedding, you get to do the eulogy at my funeral, and you know what? You even get the naming rights to my kids. You wanna name one of them Refrigerator Garin? Go ahead. I mean, it's 250 million. In totality, Banier received gifts which are reportedly amounted to over $1.5 billion. Things take a wild turn in 2006 when Liliane Bettencourt took a hard fall in an accident. She was reportedly disoriented, and Banier saw his chance. He hired staff he knew to take charge in her recovery. She was said to have been taking 52 pills a day, and not coincidentally, it was during this period when the bulk of Liliane Bettencourt's money was transferred over to Banier. One of Liliane Bettencourt's accountants, Claire Thibout, was alarmed by this, and so she reported this to Francoise Bettencourt Meyers, Liliane Bettencourt's daughter, whom I shall refer to as Meyers. Claire Thibout was intimately involved in the financial affairs of Banier and Liliane Bettencourt. One particular incident that bothered her involved Liliane Bettencourt's glorious collection of jewelry that was securely kept in the bank. The collection was said to be a floor-to-ceiling cache of diamond, pearl bracelets, tiaras, rings, and gold ingots worth tens of millions. These were neither inventoried nor insured, and so no one knew about these except for Liliane Bettencourt and Claire Thibout. Later on, Banier found out about this collection, and he put enormous pressure on Liliane Bettencourt, trying to persuade her to ask Claire Thibout to go and fetch the jewelry. Claire Thibout resisted. She was concerned about the security risk and also feared that this may just be Banier's plot to get a hold of the collection. Since Claire said no, Banier, presumably in order to get back at Claire, told Liliane Bettencourt that maybe Claire didn't want to get the jewels because perhaps she has already stolen them. Meyers asked Claire Thibout if she was willing to testify. But Claire, she wasn't excited about this because it could mean that she could lose her lucrative possession. But Meyers offered her a deal. Whatever financial losses Claire Thibout could get if she got fired, Meyers will compensate her. Claire Thibout then agreed, and will later step up to be the star witness of the trial. Aside from the jewelry collection, Meyers was already very much concerned with the staggeringly expensive gifts that her mother has been giving Banier. But keep in mind that her relationship with her mother didn't just blow up overnight. In an interview, Meyers recalls that she used to be very close with her mother. She said that this all changed when her mother started getting close with Banier. Banier would insinuate himself gradually into the life of the family. He creeped into the family affairs, and he was able to do this by doing one simple thing. He treated Liliane Bettencourt like a normal person. Of course, if you're one of the richest in the world, you're prone to being surrounded by yes men. People see you as an opportunity to advance their own interests. Liliane Bettencourt was constantly surrounded by businessmen and politicians, and so when Banier treated her normally, it was a breath of fresh air. Fed up and fearing that her mother would be further influenced by Banier, in 2007, only after a month after her father's death, Meyers went to court and filed a criminal complaint against Banier. Since Meyers was getting the vibes that her mother's decision-making abilities may now be hindered and can be easily influenced by others, she sought to have her mother put under court-ordered guardianship. If this pushes through, it would mean that Liliane Bettencourt would lose control of the all-important voting stock in L'Oreal. Unsurprisingly, Liliane Bettencourt absolutely hated this idea. She was pissed because for her, she said that she was a free woman and that her daughter would just have to suck it up and accept whatever she decides to do with her money. She also hated the idea that she'd lose control to her daughter and her husband Jean-Pierre, who she always believed as being money hungry, which is kinda ironic since she's being financially abused by Banier. This created a rift between the mother and daughter. A trial was scheduled for September of 2009, but it was delayed to July 2010. But just a month before the long-awaited trial, things take an even wilder turn. An investigative website published excerpts from recorded conversations that involved Liliane Bettencourt. Apparently, fearing that Liliane Bettencourt was being manipulated and thinking that she had Alzheimer's disease, the butler planted a tape recorder in the room where Liliane Bettencourt would hold meetings. I'm guessing that he was only trying to get proof in case people persuade her for their own benefit, but what he got instead was a bombshell. The recordings were 21 hours long, and they revealed Liliane Bettencourt's conversations with her financial advisors as well as high-ranking French government officials. The tapes included a conversation between Liliane Bettencourt talking to Florence Woerth, whom she hired as her investment manager. Take note that Florence Woerth is the wife of Eric Woerth, who served as the Minister of Finance and the campaign treasurer of French President Nicolas Sarkozy. This is a juicy revelation considering that L'Oreal has a bit of a dark Nazi past, and so, because of their right-wing leanings, a connection between Liliane Bettencourt to Nicolas Sarkozy and his Conservative Party won't sit well with the public. This Florence Woerth was hired by Patrice de Maistre. He is the wealth manager of Liliane Bettencourt. In fact, his one company, Clymene, has one single function, and that's to manage the 278 million euros that Liliane Bettencourt drew annually from her stake in L'Oreal. And it's wilder than we thought, because in her conversation with de Maistre, they were openly discussing tax evasion strategies. Tapes revealed that they were talking about moving her Swiss money to Hong Kong, Singapore, or Uruguay. A part of her conversation with de Maistre was about an island in the Seychelles that she owns. The island was undeclared in her tax records, and apparently she also gave this away to Banier. But perhaps the biggest bombshell that the tapes revealed was that she has made Banier as her sole heir, and although this doesn't include the L'Oreal shares that make up her estate, it is still pretty sizable. One important thing that the tapes brought to the spotlight was how Liliane Bettencourt was being manipulated, because she seemed to have no idea as to the gifts she's been giving Banier. She said that she had forgotten that she'd written a will which states that her personal fortune would be left to Banier. She seemed totally unaware that she had given him a private island in the Seychelles, and she was obviously confused that she was surrendering all of these to Banier. But Patrice the Maistre, being the complete asshole that he is, he continued showing her papers and getting her to sign them. All eyes were on all these characters when the trial finally took place. 1, because it involves one of the richest families in the world, and 2, because the outcome can affect the results of the next presidential elections in France. Former President Nicolas Sarkozy was already in hot water because of a state pension reform program he led that was headed for bankruptcy. Another reason why Nicolas Sarkozy was so interested in this whole saga was that he feared that if Liliane Bettencourt lost control of L'Oreal, the board could vote to move L'Oreal's headquarters and all its assets out of France and into Switzerland. But why Switzerland? Well, take note that 29.8% of L'Oreal is owned by Swiss giant Nestlé. This would mean a loss of over 64,000 French jobs, tax receipts, and national prestige. In 2011, the results came in, and it did indeed prove that the L'Oreal heiress Liliane Bettencourt was found to have had mixed dementia and moderately severe Alzheimer's disease since 2006. During the trial, the defendants of course all denied wrongdoing in the legal proceedings that lasted 5 weeks, with closing arguments heard in late February. And as for the outcome, well, it's not as satisfying as I hoped it would be. For former President Nicolas Sarkozy, all charges were dropped in 2013, claiming a lack of evidence. Woerth, France's former budget minister, was acquitted due to the lack of evidence as well. I mean, should we really be surprised that these high-ranking government officials got away with it? As for the Maistre, he was fined 250,000 euros and received sentences of 30 months in prison, 12 of which were suspended. And for Francoise Marie Banier, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, given a 350,000 euro fine, and was ordered to pay back over 158 million euros and give back 2 of his properties. This would have been a satisfying ending, but then later on in 2016, although the conviction was upheld, the prison sentence was suspended and the fine was dropped. I mean, what was even the point? They all got away with it. Banier, as well as the other folks who tried to manipulate Liliane Bettencourt, pretty much only got a slap on the wrist. But on the bright side, Francoise Bettencourt Meyers and her mother, Liliane Bettencourt, the relationship improved years after this whole affair. Meyers is now the richest woman in the world and has control of L'Oreal. And as for Liliane Bettencourt, after the trials, she could no longer even remember who Banier was. And that's where the story of the Bettencourt Affair ends. If you made it this far, help YouTube's algorithm show my videos to more people by liking and leaving a comment. This combo is such an effective way of helping the show. Don't forget that I also have a podcast. Just search for Brand Origins on any podcast app. If you want to recommend that I cover a specific brand, just message me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The links are in the description. Until the next video, this is Chris Garin.